Melbourne, the capital city of Victoria State, Australia, is situated on the southeastern fringe of the Australian landmass. The city core lies at the northern end of Port Phillip Bay, 55 kilometers from the bay's narrow entrance. It is a city that has certainly capitalized on its central position within Victoria and its port facilities to capture most of the region's trade. In a strikingly asymmetrical fashion, Melbourne's urban development lines the entire eastern shore of Port Phillip Bay. This is due to the geology of the terrain, as the fertile lands of the east were better suited for human settlement than the basalt plains to the west. The Greater Melbourne area is split between 27 cities and 4 shires. Note that none of them serve as political head, all local government areas function as equals. The area of original settlement in Melbourne, which today forms its financial heart, was laid out in a rectangular pattern that has not changed since, and it is commonly known as the Hoddle Grid. Bounded by these 4 streets, the area is easily recognizable because it lies at an angle to the rest of the Melbourne suburban grid. More recently, developments in the adjoining districts of South Bank and Docklands have made these areas into extensions of the CBD in all but name. Melbourne is typical of Australian capital cities, in that after the turn of the 20th century, it expanded with the underlying notion of a quarter-acre home and garden for every family, often referred as the Australian dream. This, coupled with the popularity of the private car after 1945, led to the autocentric urban structure, still present today in the middle and outer suburbs. Much of metropolitan Melbourne is accordingly characterized by low-density sprawl, while its inner-city areas feature predominantly medium-density and transit-oriented urban forms. The earliest suburbs such as Carlton, Collingwood, Richmond, Prahran, St Kilda, and Brighton also have a generally rectangular pattern of streets. While the most recent suburbs, like Moralbark to the northwest, present a more Americanized pattern of streets, with loops and cul-de-sacs. When it comes to architecture, the city is known for its mix of Victorian and modern buildings, with 52 reaching the height of 150 meters or higher. It is the city with the most skyscrapers in the southern hemisphere. The Royal Exhibition Building and the Hotel Windsor are just 2 examples of the boom of Victorian-style buildings the city underwent during the 1850s gold rush. Meanwhile, Flinders Street Station and the City Baths are prominent examples of the city's expansion of the early 20th century, defined largely by the Edwardian architectural style. During the post-war, Collins Place and 120 Collins Street both claimed the title for the tallest building in the city, as Melbourne was the first city in Australia to undergo a high-rise boom. More recently, the 2000s saw a continuation of the skyscrapers and tall buildings expansion. Eureka Tower and Australia 108 are the tallest buildings in the city to this date. Although Melbourne has a high dependency on the automobile for transport, particularly in the outer suburban areas, its core area is well served by an integrated public transportation system, which consists of electric trains, buses, and tramcars, the latter being a signature site in the city. The Melbourne Rail network consists of 16 lines, which radiate from the City Loop, a mostly underground subway system around the CBD. Flinders Street Station serves as the heart of the entire network. The city also has rail connections with regional cities, as well as direct interstate rail services, which depart from Melbourne's other major rail terminus, Southern Cross Station. The Overland to Adelaide departs twice a week, while the XPT to Sydney departs twice daily. Melbourne's tram network consists of 250 kilometers of track with 25 routes, making it the largest in the world. Around 75% of the network shares road space with other vehicles. Melbourne's trams are recognized as iconic cultural assets and a tourist attraction. Heritage trams operate on the Free City Circle route, intended for visitors to travel through the city during the evening. Ship transport is also an important component of Melbourne's transport system. The Port of Melbourne is Australia's largest container and general cargo port. Meanwhile, Station Pier is the main passenger ship terminal, with cruise ships and ferries, which cross the Bass Strait to Devonport, Tasmania. Melbourne has 4 airports. Melbourne Airport at Tullamarine is the city's main international and domestic gateway and second busiest in Australia. The secondary airports are Essendon, Avalon, and the light aircraft Moorabbin Airport. The city also has an extensive network of marked road lanes and segregated cycle facilities that, along with a bicycle sharing system, make most of the city accessible to cyclists. The most visited attractions are the Federation Square and Queen Victoria Market, the areas of South Bank and Docklands, the National Gallery of Victoria and Melbourne Observation Deck, the Arts Centre Melbourne and the Melbourne Cricket Ground, the Shrine of Remembrance and the Royal Exhibition Centre are all popular destinations for visitors. As the city with the 10th largest immigrant population in the world, it is not rare to hear various European and Asian languages being spoken in daily life. This multiculturalism was well depicted by the 2016 census, in which the most common ancestries amongst residents were. Around 60% identified themselves as English, Australian or Irish, followed by Chinese, Scottish and Italian, with around 7% each, while Indian, Greek, German and Vietnamese ancestries had around 3% each. The remaining is made up of a mix of Dutch, Maltese, Filipino, Sri Lankan, Polish and Lebanese ancestries. And last but not least, 0.5% of the population identified themselves as Aboriginal Australians. Melbourne is recognized as one of the world's most livable cities, partly due to a mix of cultural, sports and natural spaces that the city has attracted and heavily invested in. Some examples of the cultural offer include the Melbourne International Arts Festival and the Melbourne Fringe Festival. The city also is renowned for the range and quality of its sporting events, which often have high rates of spectatorship. It has hosted and is home to several major international sporting events, most notably the 1956 Summer Olympic Games and the Australian Open. On the nature side, the city has more than 1/4 of its inner city area consisting of public parks and reserves. The most famous one is the Royal Botanic Garden. Due to a fortunate combination of geological and climatical factors, Melbourne is often spared from the impact of major natural disasters, such as hurricanes, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. The one natural issue that has significant impact on the city is drought, which oftentimes puts Melbourne's water supplies at risk. Climate change may severely exacerbate this issue. When it comes to man-made risks, Melbourne, as mentioned before, has a high level of car dependency, resulting in significant air pollution. However, Melbourne once again is blessed with the right climatical factors that prevents air pollution to accumulate, unlike what happens in some other cities of its size. During the past 2 centuries, Melbourne has experienced a massive population growth, and in spite of the pandemic slowdown, it will remain a magnet to international talents. Thus, the challenge for future Melbourne will be ensuring that the factors and services that have created such a high quality of life in the city grow at the same pace that the population does. There is also the challenge of improving the ways to move around the city in a more effective and sustainable way, reversing the car-centric approach that has dominated until today. All in all, a bright future awaits for Melbourne, as it remains a world reference for quality of life and prosperity.